Translator, Dark Angel.
Editor, good, good, good. What a startling young sapling of talent. The supreme elite, who had been lounging in a lazy half-slumber, suddenly opened his eyes wide, his palms striking together in applause. As for the prodigy who had just fallen dead, what of it? This land lacked many things, yet prodigies were not among them. Moreover, if one could be cut down with a single stroke, what else could he be but worthless trash? Such a person was utterly unworthy of setting foot within the gates of Restore Heaven Academy. "Little girl, what is your name?" the great cultivator asked cheerfully. He was the law-keeper of the Absolute Saber sect, Guo Liangkai by name. His martial prowess had already stepped into the deity transformation tier, enough to suppress the present generation of rising heroes. Otherwise, how could he have been entrusted to guard this place? When his gaze fell upon Hu Nu, warmth and fondness filled his expression. If not for the fact that his cultivation realm was too low, he would have long since wished to take Hu Nu as his direct disciple. Yet a small girl, only 6 or 7 years of age, already possessed cultivation at the spiritual infant tier. How could he possibly be capable of guiding such a monstrous prodigy? Most likely, only the sect master or the elders possessed the qualifications to nurture such talent. "Nu is Linghan's Hu Nu?" Hu Nu declared in her somewhat confusing manner. She then skipped toward Linghan and grasped his hand, appearing exactly like a pure and innocent little girl. If the corpse of that crude fellow had not still been lying upon the ground, with sparks of lightning continuing to crackle around it, perhaps everyone present would truly have been deceived by how pure and adorable she appeared at that moment. Guo Liangkai swept his gaze across Linghan, already deciding within his heart if Linghan's talent proved mediocre, he would kill him outright, so he would no longer influence this little girl. Such an exceptional sapling must be properly cultivated. More importantly, she was still young. Her mind could easily be moulded. Countless ideas and doctrines instilled within her, Hu Nu stepped forward once more to undergo the test for Bone Age. This time, even the few disciples conducting the test behaved with utmost respect. She had already earned the admiration of a law-keeper of the deity transformation tier. Anyone with even a shred of intelligence could see how terrifying Hu Nu's future would be, considering how fierce she already was at such a tender age. They could only regard her with reverence. 7, just over 7 years old, not yet 8. Her bone age was quickly determined. Yet Hu Nu appeared slightly annoyed. Being pricked by a needle hurt a little, causing her to glare viciously at the disciple who had tested her. That ferocity was truly frightening. It even surpassed the level of the spiritual infant tier. The disciple immediately lost control of his bladder in sheer terror, and a foul stench quickly spread. Linghan himself was also astonished. He had not expected that Hu Nu had likewise broken through to the spiritual infant tier. However, the little girl had always been strange and extraordinary. No matter how quickly her cultivation rose, it somehow still felt completely natural. "Heng!" Guo Liangkai was extremely displeased, shouting toward the disciple who had disgraced himself, "Get lost and clean yourself up before returning!" "Yes! Yes!" The disciple nodded repeatedly before spinning around and fleeing. Yet in his heart, an unbelievable thought surfaced. Hu Nu's glare was even more terrifying than Guo Liangkai's. How could such a thing be possible? Guo Liangkai was a cultivator of the deity transformation tier. The deity transformation tier. Linghan stepped forward, the aura of the spiritual infant tier flowing from his body, proving that he possessed the qualifications to undergo the Bone Age test. At this moment, he had already restored his original appearance. Since he had resolved to establish his own kingdom and split open the heavens, he had decided that from this day forth he would reveal his true face to the world. After all, a heaven-grade alchemist could roam the heavens and earth freely, doing as he pleased wherever he went. Please extend your hand. For Hu Nu's sake, the disciple responsible for conducting the Bone Age test used the word please. Otherwise, he would have simply barked an order. For those who were not directly admitted to the academy, their talents were not particularly impressive, so why would he bother with courtesy? However, Hu Nu's appearance had made them realize one truth. The world was simply far too vast. At any moment, a heaven-defying prodigy might emerge. You dare act fierce toward New's Ling Han? Hu Nu was still dissatisfied, glaring again at the disciple, her savage gaze fully unleashed once more. That disciple immediately collapsed onto the ground in fright. He felt as though he had been targeted by a primordial beast, goosebumps erupting across his entire body. He nearly lost control of his bladder. Only now did he understand what his companion had experienced earlier. This little girl was practically not human. Ling Han chuckled softly and said, "All right, stop causing trouble." Only then did Hu Nu break into a bright smile, happily holding Ling Han's hand again, looking entirely like an obedient little girl. Even if someone died after being deceived by her innocent appearance, she certainly would not compensate them with her life. Anyone foolish enough to believe her would only blame their own misfortune. Ling Han stretched out his hand. The disciple had also climbed back to his feet after wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. In his trembling hand he held a golden needle, yet it quivered without end. Though he had not been frightened to the point of losing control of his bladder, the shock he had suffered was hardly small. "I poke!" Calming the chaos in his heart, he thrust the needle toward Ling Han's wrist. Yet the golden needle, thin as a strand from a bull's hide, could not pierce through Ling Han's skin at all. "Do not use your origin power to defend," the disciple began to say with slight displeasure. However, before he could finish speaking, astonishment filled his face. What kind of monster was this? Ling Han clearly had not used any origin power to protect himself, yet his skin was so tough that even the penetrating bone needle could not pierce it. The penetrating bone needle was a tool specifically designed to test bone age. It could easily pierce the skin of a spiritual infant-tier cultivator, reaching directly to the bone and extracting a tiny fragment of bone tissue. The markings etched along the needle would then reveal the corresponding age. The younger the cultivator, the more precise the measurement, accurate down to individual years. But after reaching 100 years of age, the values would be recorded in spans of 10, 20, or even 50 years. After all, once one reached 400 or 500 years old, their cultivation would often remain unchanged for at least 50 years. Yet now the penetrating bone needle could not pierce Ling Han's skin at all. Furthermore, he had not used any origin power to defend himself. How could such a thing be possible? Had he encountered a monster?
"Hurry! Hurry!
How long do you intend to keep poking Ling Han?" Hu Nu said impatiently. Did this fellow hold a grudge against Ling Han? He kept poking him again and again without even pausing to breathe. With Hu Nu pressing him, the disciple grew even more nervous, and his hand trembled even more violently. Forget about piercing Ling Han's skin. He could not even manage to pierce Ling Han's hand. "Trash!" Guo Liangchai strode forward, shoving the disciple aside while snatching the penetrating bone needle. Then he thrust the needle toward Ling Han's hand himself.
Weng!
The golden needle dropped and instantly became shorter. Had the needle pierced through? No. Guo Liangkai was astonished despite himself. The penetrating bone needle had not shortened because it pierced Ling Han's skin. Rather, Guo Liangkai had exerted too much strength, while Ling Han's skin was too tough, causing the needle to be crushed directly. That was why it appeared as though it had pierced through. "This monster!" The onlookers had originally been mocking the disciple who had embarrassed himself, but now not a single person could even smile. How terrifying was such a physique! Even when a deity transformation tier cultivator personally made a move, it remained unharmed. "I will do it myself," Ling Han said as he drew the demon birth sword. With a single slash, his skin immediately split open. At first, Guo Liangkai was stunned. Then he quickly thrust the needle into the open wound, touching Ling Han's flesh before withdrawing the penetrating bone needle to inspect it. Once again, an expression of extreme astonishment appeared upon his face as he exclaimed involuntarily, "Over 19 years old, not yet 20. I'm about to faint." The surrounding crowd was once again struck speechless. Another monster had appeared. Though he was not quite as monstrous as Hu Nu, if one considered the terrifying toughness of his physique, he was not far behind at all. Ling Han sheathed the demon birth sword. He did not even need to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll. The body of diamond had already engraved every mystery of the scroll into each fragment of his flesh and blood, allowing his skin to heal automatically. Not even the faintest scar remained, as though his sword had never touched him. This caused the crowd to once again cry out, "Monster!" involuntarily. How could they possibly defeat Ling Han? The toughness of his physique had already reached the limits of what a spiritual infant-tier cultivator could achieve. Among cultivators of the same realm, how many could break through his defense? Furthermore, his recovery ability was so powerful it made one's hair stand on end. He was practically an invincible existence among all peers of the same cultivation level.
Translator!
Dark Angel, Henyi. After the fleeting astonishment faded, Guo Liankai's heart brimmed with delight. Now that another prodigious sapling had appeared, he secretly resolved to draw this youth into the ranks of the Absolute Saber sect. Although the Restore Heaven Academy had been jointly founded by the 5 great sects, since they were divided into 5 distinct factions, the currents of rivalry and hidden stratagems among them were naturally endless. Every sect wished to secure the finest young talents as fresh blood for their own ranks. This was a matter as inevitable as rivers flowing toward the sea. Very good, very good. Guo Liankai nodded repeatedly, his eyes shining. Young man, I shall remember you well? Ling Han merely smiled faintly. Guo Liankai was only at the 5th layer of the deity transformation tier. His battle prowess was at most 9 stars, and even now Ling Han could suppress him. At the very least, he could battle the man to a draw. Thus, there was truly no need for Ling Han to treat him with particular seriousness. Take him to heart. Furthermore, Ling Han truly held no affection whatsoever for anyone belonging to the 5 great sects. Ling Han and his companions smoothly passed the test. As for the big white rabbit, having apparently lived for several hundred years, it naturally disdained participating in such a test. It had long since disappeared somewhere to steal carrots. In its eyes, any valuable medicinal herb could be called a carrot. The reason Ling Han had not brought Rabbit into the Black Tower was precisely because of its kleptomaniac nature. He feared that the moment it entered, it would ransack the entire Black Tower from top to bottom. One must guard against villains, after all. After completing the Bone Age examination, they had to wait before moving on to the first trial. This was because the test had a fixed time limit, and all examinees would advance together. Ling Han and his 2 companions arrived at a vast public square. The place was enormous. Even now, more than 30,000 people had gathered here, and yet only half a day had passed since the Bone Age test had begun. By the time it concluded, there would certainly be even more people. What a shock! It turned out that there were actually so many people who fulfilled the requirements. Ling Han could not help but sigh inwardly. The fortune of this realm had erupted explosively over the past 2 centuries, and that surge had greatly influenced the martial world. If it had been in his previous life, under the same circumstances, gathering even 1,000 people here would already have been impressive. The disparity was simply too great. Ling Han did not deliberately search for the Rain Emperor or Mu Rongqing, but someone instead came looking for him.
Ling Han!
Qin Lianyuo appeared before him, wearing a hesitant expression as she studied him carefully. After all, the last time they had met, Ling Han had been disguised. However, Ling Han possessed a highly distinctive trait. Who knew? Aside from that monstrous little girl, who else could possibly have passed today's test? It has been a long time. Ling Han nodded with a smile. It really is you. Only now did Qin Lianyuo finally confirm his identity. She then looked him over suspiciously. Is this your real face this time? As real as it gets, Ling Han replied with a grin. Qin Lianyuo was stunned for a moment before exclaiming, I never imagined that you were actually so young. Thank you for the compliment, Ling Han said, smiling broadly. Brother Ling! The 2 siblings, Li Fengyu and Li Zixian, walked over and greeted him. Hello, Ling Han nodded in return. This is... When Li Fengyu noticed Qin Lianyuo, his eyes instantly brightened. He hurried forward and declared, Beautiful miss, I am a promising young talent named Li Fengyu, shockingly handsome and possessing a level of good looks that soar beyond the heavens. I cannot see how handsome you are, but you are certainly talented at boasting, Qin Lianyue said with a smile. Oh, him? Everyone calls him Big Mouth Li. Bragging is his greatest skill, Ling Han revealed calmly. What? Li Fengyu feigned indignation. I am not merely skilled at boasting, I am proficient in all forms of music. Wind instruments, bowed strings, and I can even pluck string instruments while singing. Brother, please stop talking. Li Zixian's face had already flushed red. With such a clown for an elder brother, she always felt as if she had been cast into a pit of endless embarrassment. Little sister, your hair clip is truly beautiful. Qin Lianye approached Li Zixian. Women had their own unique way of connecting, and before long, Zhu Xuan'er was also drawn into the conversation. The three girls chatted endlessly, their laughter light and harmonious, as though they had known each other for years. When Ling Han spotted Kan Ye, He Lanjun naturally stood beside him. However, Ling Han shook his head slightly toward Kan Ye, signaling that he should not come over to greet him. Look, Wenren Qianqian has arrived. Everyone immediately turned their gaze in the same direction. She was a prodigy of the Wide Sun sect. Previously, she had possessed no particularly resounding reputation, yet she had suddenly risen to prominence recently. Her strength was sufficient to threaten the positions of veteran geniuses such as Yao Huiyu and the Small Saber King. She truly is breathtaking. She can definitely be compared to a fairy. In my opinion, only Fairy Yi Yun could rival her. Have you forgotten Donglinger? Hehe. Donglinger exists on an entirely different level. In this world, there is no other woman who can compare with her, so she cannot even be included in such comparisons. The surrounding spectators spoke excitedly, their faces filled with admiration and fascination. Even Ling Han felt a hint of curiosity. Just how stunning could Donglinger possibly be to cause so many prodigies to lose themselves in admiration? Wenren Qian stood alone, incomparably beautiful. Combined with her astonishing strength, not a single person dared to approach within 15 meters of her. All could only admire this fairy-like figure from afar. Of course, there were also some bold young men who dared to strike up conversations with her. Those who approached politely were merely rejected with cold indifference. Some who attempted to leverage the authority of their clans or sects to pressure her were immediately forced back when she drew her sword. They retreated in utter humiliation. Ling Han soon noticed Lu Yuanji. The man still carried a wooden sword, his expression as rigid as carved timber. His entire being resembled a sword itself, but a sword that had not yet been drawn from its sheath, radiating a sealed and restrained aura. Among those who might one day form Sword Heart, this man was undoubtedly one of the most promising candidates. His entire focus lay upon the sword, his devotion bordered on madness. Within his heart, only the sword existed. He was a prodigy, and combined with such diligence, such obsession, the achievements he might reach would naturally be astonishing. The day passed swiftly. At dawn, the Restore Heaven Academy announced the beginning of the first round of tests. All examinees had 3 days to cross 3 mountains and reach a ravine. The ravine was called Ghost Lock Ravine. Anyone who managed to reach the destination within 3 days would qualify to enter the next round of testing. Moreover, those who arrived earlier would enter the next round earlier. As for those who arrived after the 3 days had passed, they could only return home in disappointment. In the first round, fighting was strictly forbidden. Anyone who violated this rule would be immediately expelled. In the second round, fighting would be permitted, but killing was prohibited. After all, by then everyone would already be disciples of the Restore Heaven Academy. Within this region, ultimate cultivators would continuously sweep the area with their divine sense, monitoring for any shockwaves produced by battle. With a single signal, the crowd set off. Ling Han nodded toward Qin Lianye, Li Fengyu and the others before leading Zhu Xuan'er and Hu Niu into the forest. He felt a trace of surprise. In this place, invisible currents of air surged from the sides. They nearly lifted his entire body from the ground. Fortunately, his physique was sufficiently powerful. As he sank his center of gravity, he stood firm like an immovable mountain. Whether winds blew from the east, south, west or north, what could they possibly do to him? Zhu Xuan'er, however, was lifted instantly by a single gust. Fortunately, Ling Han reacted swiftly and caught her in time. Zhu Xuan'er seized the opportunity to fall into her face flushed with embarrassment, yet her heart secretly filled with delight. Hu Niu giggled merrily and danced amid the winds. Just as it seemed she might be blown far away, she transformed into a bolt of lightning and reappeared beside Ling Han.
Ugly girl! Let go of news, Ling Han, right now!
The little girl shouted angrily, her jealousy blazing. Ling Han lifted Hu Niu into his arms as well. Only then did the little girl finally quiet down, though she continued to pout. Heng, the wind direction suddenly shifted again. This time it pushed them forward, yet moments later it reversed, forcing them backward, then forward again, and then toward the left. The direction changed with bewildering speed. No wonder they were given 3 full days to cross 3 mountains. The winds here blew entirely at random. Ling Han was certain that most people would not reach the end, even if they were given 30 days, let alone the mere 3 days allotted. To become disciples of the Restore Heaven Academy simply by walking out of this place within 3 days, how could such a trial possibly be simple?